All right, hello everybody. Welcome. We just finished an awesome seminar about how to troubleshoot your pinball machine using the Flash Gordon. We're going to continue to work on this game over at the Marco booth later today, doing all sorts of repinning connectors, bulletproofing the game, adding yopsicles to it. So if you've never done yopsicles, it's a pretty cool install. They're these little LED light boards that work on these older solid-state Bally and Stern games, as well as some commenting and re-rubbering, a whole little restore. But
These will actually work in other games too, but you got to be a little bit selective.
right. So without further ado, here is Phil Forrester from the Phil's Pinball, and he's going to talk about what I think is one of the most important rebuilds you need to know, and a very simple one because this is going to help keep your game flipping really nice.
Yeah, I'm Phil from the Phil's Pinball, thank you, and this is Matthew Talley from Lynn's Arcade and Monterey. Monterey, say the name.
Monterey Flipper Pinball.
Monterey Flipper Pinball. I was always going to mess it up. I was going to say Flipper Monterey Pinball or something like that. So
MFP.
Yeah. So we're going to show you how we would do a flipper rebuild, and we're going to do this like we'd normally do. We're going to take a picture of the wires up here and have it for reference and everything. So when we're taking this off, if we need to go back and look at anything, we have it. Because some of these wire colors and everything, they kind of start blending over time, and you just want to make sure. So we'll take pictures of it so we know exactly how these go on. A lot of this stuff needs to be cleaned up. Somebody has replaced this or something at some point, put a lot of extra solder, going weird directions, and so we're going to clean all this up and stuff while we're going. But with these flipper rebuild kits that you can get from Marco's, they have all these components, the wear components in the kit. So it's a one-to-one replacement, whether it's the actual plunger here, the coil stop on the back, the switches here, or the crank that you have, and the actuators that actually open up your end of stroke switch. How many people here know the function of an end of stroke switch? How many people don't know the function of an end of stroke switch? Okay, so when you see in your manual, you see EOS, that means end of stroke. And what this is doing in a flipper coil, that's actually two coils in one. And what you have is one side that's your power, that's hitting the ball with all the force it has, and then another side that actually holds up that flipper when you actually hold the button in. And what would happen is if they just had one coil in there and it was the action side, that power and how much power they need to actually push that pinball forward is enough voltage and everything that it would, if you held it in, it would just melt the whole entire coil. The heat from it would just melt down. And so with that, what they came up with was they put two coils in one. So you have one with some thicker windings, you have some with a thinner winding, and the resistance, when they change it, they're able to allow that to hold on longer without overheating. And so that's what they're doing. So when you're hitting that end of stroke switch, when you get the flipper and it goes all the way up, it gets to the end of its stroke, it is actually opening up a switch, or on these, it's opening up a switch where it actually is switching from one coil over to the other coil. And so you're going from the action side, as I call it, to the hold side. And it does it instantaneously, where it's opening up that switch. And then when it does that, it switches right over. And so when you have your flipper and it's not working correctly, one of the first places we check is that end of stroke switch. It should be, in most of these older games, in a normally closed position, which the normally closed position means that it's touching. Those contacts on that leaf switch are actually sitting there touching in a resting state. If the flipper is there resting, those contacts should be touching. So that's normally closed. If it's normally open, then in a resting position, it would be those contacts are not touching. They switched it over in later games where they have normally open. So you do want to make sure you're getting the right switch and the right kit for your game, because if you don't have it and it's normally open or normally closed, that's going to affect your game and how it plays. And so what it actually does, you have that action side, the switch opens up, it switches over to the hold side, and then when you let go, it goes back to where it's in its resting position, normally closed, ready for action again. And so that end of stroke switch is one of the first things that we will inspect. But with these kits, it comes with brand new end of stroke switches, and so you'll have those in the kit. So what Matthew's doing right now is he's getting this prepared so that we can take this off and actually bring some of this to the bench and actually do it over here. It's a little bit easier, but then also it allows us to take pictures, clean up some of the wiring while we're at it, take a lot of the solder that's on there if somebody has added a lot of solder to those flipper mechs, and get all of it cleaned up at the same time, so we're not just adding a bunch of solder back on and having this big glob sitting there. And so he's taking off the coil stop right now. And so when you, that's one of the first things to get this starts to come apart, get your coil out of there, get it out of the way, whatever you need to do, you're gonna take that coil stop off. And what you have inside those flippers is you have a plunger and you have a coil stop. It's where the plunger actually stops, hits here, and that hit actually takes that potential energy and transfers it up to the flipper bat, and then actually allows you to flip the game and flip the ball and play the game. And so when that hit needs to happen very cleanly. If it's worn, it's going to have less power. You're going to feel that, hey, that flipper is weak because you're feeling resistance from how it's having to settle in itself, and that is losing potential energy. And so that potential energy, we want it as clean as possible. So we want the coil stop and the plunger to actually have a clean, flat, flush hit on them. And they'll actually has like a kind of clanging sound that you hear when you have good coil stops and good plungers. You'll hear a clink, 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 clink kind of sound when you do it in. And then when it's starting to wear, it gets deeper. And it's like dunk, 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 dunk. And you'll hear that sound, but you can also feel it and you feel that resistance. And so in this, it's kind of like brakes on a car. If you keep beating metal on metal, eventually it's going to wear down, and you're going to have to get in this position where you're going to end up changing out your flippers in where we do all the moving parts. So you have that plunger that comes and hits the coil stop, that's a moving part. You have the switch that's opening and closing, but that also has a high voltage going through it, so those switches get pitted, and it causes where there's lots of resistance. Anywhere you have resistance, you have heat, and you have less available voltage to you for how much power that flipper will have. So if that's pitted a lot, you may not have an issue with your coil or anything, but it's causing resistance at that switch, and so it's feeling weaker because it's actually not getting its full voltage because of that resistance that you have from the pitting on your leaf switch. And so he's taking it apart. He pulled the coil out of the way. He's got his flipper bat out. He was using an 1/8 of an inch Allen key to take off those pawls and the cranks there. And so there's set screws in either side of that where it latches onto the bat and is able to pivot and turn the bat on top of the playfield. There's 2 set screws in there. You have to loosen those and pull that the bat shaft out of that crank and loosen it up. And so he's getting all this, get it all prepared, took his pictures, and he's pulling this down so we can show you a little bit better. You don't have to take it out of your game. If we were on location or somewhere else, we probably wouldn't. But in this scenario, it makes it a lot easier for us to show you some of the things that are going on. Man, that's a gnarly spring there, man.
That spring, you can see the return spring's been bent, and it's probably something out of a different game, or they just had one of these springs lying around. You can also see, here's our new flipper plunger, and you can see the difference between the old and the new. See all this rounding that's happened? That's going to make a lot of slop happen inside the while it's trying to plunge.
And anywhere you have slop, whether it be there, if it is one of the flipper mechs that has an inline spring, or one of the ones that it's on the outside like this game, anywhere you have slop, that is going to take away from that potential energy. It can't transfer that energy over to the flipper bat because there's slop in it. It's actually moving, and so you're losing some of that energy. And so any of that you see, any slop you see in a linkage, any slop you see in your spring, all of that kind of stuff, you are losing some sort of energy there, and it's attributing to why your game isn't playing like it should. So these flipper mechs are actually like inline ones, and they actually have these collars here that these inlines go through. And commonly on these games, you'll see it on like 8-Ball Deluxe, you'll see it on these, you'll see it on Centaur, and these little nylon collars that go in are either missing or they're broken or something, and a lot of people overlook that. And so what they end up doing is this breaks out, falls in their game somewhere, and then they end up just putting it back in, and now you have metal rubbing on metal, and it'll oval this whole thing out, and it'll cause it to go really badly. Because then it'll get stuck, it'll start going in sideways, it'll start wearing on your plunger as well. And so it's very important, don't skip that step if you're doing these.
Yeah,
that's one of the most important parts of these.
Thought we got some new ones. We might have them at the booth. But.
Yeah. And we have some new ones and stuff. Running around here and trying to carry around all the parts that you need, that's one of the biggest things we run into with pinball repair, is to try to have, at Marco Specialties, there's over 30,000 SKUs that they have of pinball parts. Mark Manteltor would always tell me there's over 3,000 individual parts in a pinball machine. And so when we go somewhere to repair it, to have every single part you need lined up, ready to go, is that. So we bought some, in bulk, really, for this game. And so we went through and got everyone. But if you get the kits, it's going to have all that stuff right in there for you. And, when you're flying and everything, too. So he's cleaning this up. He's cleaning up all around. These bushings here, sometimes if you see that they're broken and stuff, you want to replace them but that's not always 100% necessary. Those are nylon, so that they don't kind of wear quite as quickly as metal on metal, and then it's in there moving, so you don't have to, but there is a lot of times that you want to. So walk us through, Matthew, what you're doing right now.
So what I'm doing at the moment is finding my correct switch that goes in here. So I can take this side apart. That's the one I'm looking for. So this is the switches I'm going to be replacing. So this one actually looks fine, but I'm just going to do it anyway, just to show you guys how it's done. Just making sure that the distance is the same. The stack here of the spacers is the same as this one. If it wasn't, I'd be able to actually reuse some of these spacers from this other switch to make it actually stack up properly. But since it does line up, I'm just going to go with it.
And just making sure that you have it in the correct orientation, where he was doing it, and making sure that everything was in the correct way. It wasn't flipped around and going to be closing the switch instead of opening the switch, and just doing it. But these are one-to-one replacements, so when we're doing it, we kind of do one thing at a time, and take one part off, put one part on, and just keep replacing all the way through. And it makes it a lot easier with that, just, hey, I've got it all laid here. I know I need to do one-to-one on all of these replacements. And when you're taking those switch stacks apart, it's common for them to fall apart on you and everything. So you just want to look at them and make sure. In this scenario, with it, so he's done this, he's putting it on. When we put it back in the game, it's got two wires that go to it. And they're done in a certain order. You can read in the manual which ones go where, how it's supposed to do, which lugs it's supposed to be. All of that is in your manual. But on this, it's just opening and closing a switch. So in all reality, it doesn't matter if you flip-flop the lugs on the actual switch. It matters if you do it on the coil,
Right.
but it doesn't matter on this switch because it's just opening and closing. Sometimes the wires will be at different lengths, and you'll really want to match them up because this one reaches to this lug and this one reaches to this lug. And so if you do it backwards, you'll run into a scenario where you're yanking on it and you go, oh, it doesn't reach anymore. What did I do wrong? Well, it's just you flip-flop those. But if you're talking about from an electrical standpoint, whether you're going to do it wrong or not, on the actual end of stroke switch, it's just opening and closing a switch, so it does not have a polarity to it.
So a nice little trick here to test.
Ooh, I never do that.
Yeah, you can put a screwdriver through it, and then that'll kind of give you the motion like a flipper bat would do. So you can kind of get your coil or your end of stroke minorly adjusted here before you get back in the game and have to do it. It also makes it so you can get your spring on outside the game, which is much easier to do than when it's already up in the game. I say that, and now I'm going to struggle with it. But.
And again, those little pliers that he's using are a great tool for springs and stuff. We find those at Home Depot right now and or Amazon, but it's a little bit smaller. They're made by Crescent of the pliers, and you can actually take the ends of those springs and kind of move them around into the hook places and use them. They fit in more places than your normal pliers would.
All right, so now we got our coil stop. We got our new coil sleeve. So that's our old coil stop. That's our new coil stop. These are the right ones.
Yeah, and if you'll look at this, it's indented here. You can see all the wear. You can see where it was wearing on this side as well. And so that's all that wear that's happening. Just like a brakes in a car, you're hitting metal on metal, and it wears itself down. And then on these, they've tapered them. And really what that tapering is doing is giving you longer life out of your plunger. Because with it tapered, even if it mushrooms a little bit, it's not scraping on your actual coil sleeve that's in there. It's actually mushrooming and staying within that radius so that you can get longer life out of your plungers as well. So all the new stuff, they're gonna have that taper on there to give you longer life.
Something I like to do if I end up rebuilding flippers on a old Bally like this, the way the lock screws on the crank here dig into your flipper bat. It's like the old flipper bat. You can kind of see where it like is dug in. And so I'll usually replace the old bat with a new bat just to get fresh spots so it doesn't reseat back into the same position as the old, or if you want to adjust them and stuff.
Yeah, and if you use if you've had to take that bat on and off a lot, those indentions that he's talking about kind of wallow out. And what you'll see a lot of times is you'll tighten it in, but that flipper bat will still move just a little bit where those pieces have wallowed. And so you'll have this little bit of play in there, and it's because it's got walled out sections on that. So replacing them with a new bat is a great thing to do because then you don't have it where it comes up and then it can move a little bit forward. Again, that's like a little slop in there, and you're gonna lose energy that way as it goes up and as it hits things.
So now we are just reinstalling the plate. This was a tool I picked up. It's actually an electric screwdriver, not a drill. So it's meant to put screws in and not just drill through stuff. And it's got a nice little, clutch on it. So you can adjust how hard it goes. But it just kind of speeds up and saves my wrists a little bit.
Why would you adjust the clutch on it? Tell us what's
so you don't end up stripping out the holes in your playfield. So like if you have it on max, I have mine on max, but I also have learned how to take the pressure away and not like just sit there and hold it and drive it through, because then you'll strip the wood out. with your screws. So you can actually have the clutch on to where it'll stop before that tension will end up ripping your screw holes through. And like then you have to get bigger screws or fill the holes, and it's kind of it's a pain.
Yeah, it works very similar to a torque wrench, where it'll start, when you get to the certain torque, it'll start slipping, and you know it won't go any further and damage your play field and strip it out like he was talking about.
So once I get the plate back in, I like to put my plunger through and just kind of get it so it holds everything together and it's not flopping around a lot. And then I go and I take my set screws and I just get them started. I'm not going to tighten them down all the way. I'm just going to get them so they just start to bite. If I can find the...
And this is one of the hardest parts of just getting that Allen key in there. There's no secret to it. It's just you got to get it in there and line it up and do it. But getting it lined up in certain positions sometimes is difficult to do.
This one might be a little bit smaller. To do a 7. So I guess on the new ones, yeah, they have, no, that's way too small.
Maybe a metric.
Maybe metric?
Yep.
Oh, no.
Sorry.
You got metric. Something that's missing out of my kit is a metric. Oh, it's German. The new ones are all from Germany. Nice. Good parts, though. Yeah, metric. Nice.
It's always good to have in
$2.5.
pinball a standard and a metric set of your Allen wrenches. There are a little different times where you'll run into that, where you'll have something that's just a little bit different. The manufacturer could only get a certain set screw, or whatever it may be. It was cheaper for them. We're getting made. Some of these parts were getting made in Germany and things, and it's readily. They're not going to have those set screws readily available in a standard, and so it does get switched over from time to time. But having a set of both of them is key, because you'll run into different situations with it. Tell me again, how many people have rebuilt a flipper before in here? Tell me, what was the first game you ever rebuilt a flipper on? Do you remember?
Gold Wings.
Gold Wings.
Nice.
Gottlieb Gold Wings.
That's right.
Nice. Those are a little bit different too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Actually, my son's got one of these old Talley mechanisms, a toy.
Oh yeah, plays with it?
Yep.
That's awesome. He was saying his son has one of these old Bally mechanisms as a toy.
Oh, nice.
It's like a Rector sets, but cooler.
Okay, so now that I got it, just kind of, it's not super tight down, but now it can like all stay together. Then I'll continue on with my process here. Got a new coil sleeve for our coil. So if you look at the this mech over here, you can see the orientation of the coil. I like to switch that up if I have enough wire, and at the moment I'm not going to do it because then it's just going to end up being a mess. Maybe I do have enough. So I like to have them oriented this way as opposed to this way, for the reason that the coil stop is on the end where the plunger ends up hitting it. And if these wires are on the coil stop like that, it's rattling every time that coil hits that thing. These are all going to be rattling, and you might end up breaking these wires off just with the rattle effect. Switching it, orienting them this way, like now all the shock is going into the coil stop, and it's away from all these lugs. But I don't have this wire at the moment to actually be able to reach all the way over, so I'm just going to kind of go back to the standard way. And then your coil sleeve, whatever way the coil stop is going to sit, that's where you put this ridged edge. So that's where the coil stop will end up sitting like this, and that's going to hold that sleeve in there. So the coil's going in like this, coil stops at the top, coil sleeve comes in like that, sets down and goes actually through this little housing to hold it in place. I also need to put my tensioner. So this little piece is also very important. That goes in between the coil and the either the stop or the guide hole, I guess is what you would call it, bracket. And then that way, what it's doing is when you screw in your coil stop, that's like making that coil sit nice and tight in there, with just giving it a little bit of tension is what that's doing.
Yeah, those spring washers, if you ever see them, a coil in your flippers where it starts and can bounce all over and it's real loose in there, putting one of those spring washers in is a great thing to do. And it'll sure up that. And again, anytime you have any kind of slack, any kind of movement, you're going to be losing some power at times. And it wants to keep it in place. And so that spring washer will actually keep it down in place.
Step back. I dropped a screw.
Which screw did you drop?
End of stroke. Oh yeah, nice. We got more. That's great. No, it was a silver. It looked like it landed right between your feet, but I don't know where it went. Anyway.
And so just going over again, you're gonna, on these type, you're gonna have that nylon collar that you've replaced out with the crank we've replaced out. He's actually replaced out the bat as well to eliminate all of those indentions that you get on a bat. And then now we're putting in the new coil stop, and he's also put the spring washer back in there. And then once he gets all this stuff back in place, kind of give it a little bit of test, but then you can fix your wiring. That's when you pull out your pictures in your phone and look at it and say, hey, what's going to be? And you can hear that kind of clank that I was talking about earlier, where it has that little high-pitched clank.
That's the sound you want to hear. The old one, there was no clack anymore. Like it was just dull, and like it didn't have any metal on metal anymore. So that one still has a little bit, but this one's got like a nice high pitch clank. That just sounds dull, where this one's got a nice click to it. So what I'm going to do now is adjust this end of stroke switch. See if I can pull it down so you can get a better look at it. But you can see when this plunger ends up hitting the the coil stop, there's not a gap right here, and you need that gap to go to low power, like Phil was saying. So
What happens if you don't?
If you don't go to hold power, it's going to be on high power. It's going to end up frying your coil, because you're going to be like, if you hold that flipper button down and you're cradling a ball and it's all high power, you're just going to roast through this coil. And then you'll roast through the coil sleeve most likely. Then your flippers get sluggish and
it'll happen quickly.
Very quickly.
So that's when you have an actual coil for the flipper coil go bad on these older games. One of the first things to look at is that end of stroke switch, because that's usually where the problem is. It's not opening up all the way and not transferring over to that whole coil.
That's pretty good. We're pretty much done. I'm going to just solder these wires on and we're good to go. Yeah. So yeah, all I'm trying to do is make sure that these switches actually do wipe. So I need this back one to see how it just ever so slightly moves when it comes back in. That's giving me good contact on that switch. So there's that. And it opens up nice and perfect. So now we're going to solder these two wires back on after referencing my photos, seeing which one goes to which side of this switch. But it doesn't actually matter on that end.
That part, as long as they reach on the end of stroke switch.
Cool. We can do it at the booth, yeah, since we're past our time here. But you got to get to see like the basic idea of what we're doing. There's still going to be adjustments of the flipper on the top side and then really wrenching this guy down to get it nice and tight, but we'll do that at the booth.
Thank y'all so much for joining us. We're going to be doing lots of demos over at the booth for the rest of the day. So y'all come out and see it. If you have any questions, ask us questions. We're going to be doing all this, putting in the obstacles, working on this game, and getting it back. But we appreciate you. Thank you for coming in here. If you have any questions, come and ask us. Marco's specialties for all these parts. Marco's is doing a TPF25 free shipping. So same as if you got it here, same price. It'll be at home when you get there. So order your parts. And if you need help finding those parts, let us know. Thank you all so much for coming.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.